Hi there, my name is Cindy and I'm part of the partnerships team here at Pinterest. Today I'm going to provide you an overview of our CPC Promoted Pins product, including a tutorial of how to set up your account. By the end of this video, you should feel confident in your ability to navigate our ads tool, as well as set up your promoted pins to maximize clicks and performance right out of the gates. Before I dive into the tutorial, I'm going to provide just a quick overview on how the product actually works. So first off, you only pay for clicks from your website directly from a promoted pin. What this means is that any clicks that are because of a repin of a promoted pin, we consider as downstream clicks or earned traffic. You'll be able to see this in the reporting exports from your campaign's profile. Second, what you actually pay for a click is dependent on a few things. The first is your max CPC bid. This is the maximum cost that you're willing to pay for a click to your website. Other factors that will come into play for what you ultimately pay are the competitiveness of the auction, as well as the ultimate performance of your pin. So basically, if you have better creative, better targeting, and stronger performance, this could mean that your traffic may be more efficient. Lastly, the way that our targeting works is that we will contextually target your pin across Pinterest based on the terms in which you bid. So now I'm going to get started and actually dive into a tutorial to help you set up your account. So here I am in the Pinterest profile for Arcade Belt Company. They're an apparel company based out of Olympic Valley, California, and they sell belts and outdoor gear for both men and women. So to access the Promoted Pins interface, what you can do from your profile, as I'm doing right now, is you can go to the gear icon and select from the drop-down Promoted Pins. This now takes me to Arcade Belt Company's overall Promoted Pins dashboard. If you haven't set up your account yet, the first page that you'll see is actually a Get Started page. If you click on the Get Started button, you'll then follow the flow that I'm about to walk through. So the first thing that you need to do to promote a pin is click on this Promote button up here. This now takes me to the section within Promoted Pins where I will pick the piece of creative that I want to promote. There's a number of different ways that you can choose pins to promote. The default view that I'm in right here as I'm scrolling down is basically a view of all the pins that Arcade has pinned to their profile. You could also sort by 30-day most clicked pins as well as 30-day most repinned. There's a few things to consider when choosing which pins to promote. First of all, in order to promote a pin, it has to live on a public board. It also cannot be a GIF or a video pin. Additionally, I strongly encourage you to check out our DR Creative Guide. This will provide some really good tips in thinking about which creative will set you up to drive more clicks and better performance right out of the gates. A few important things to think about are making sure that your pins have a tall aspect ratio. Additionally, having longer descriptions, if you look at this pin here, can also help boost up clicks and engagement. We've also seen that for direct response CPC pins, having a text overlay or multiple products in a shot can perform really well. I also wanted to make sure that you pay attention to our advertising rules when thinking about which pins to promote. You can navigate to our advertising rules by looking at our Promoted Pins Help Center. Right here is kind of the link that you can review, and this has all the details about what we will and will not allow when it comes to promoted pins. Definitely check this out in detail before promoting your pins. But a few of the most important callouts are that first, you can only promote pins that have one hashtag. Additionally, we don't allow any pins with pricing information to be promoted. If you want to include price in your promoted pin, you should promote a rich pin. And last but not least, you need to think cautiously about how you want to include promotional pins. We do allow promotions if there's a start and an end date, such as 50% off from December 1st through December 31st, 2015. We also will allow promotions if it's an always-on sale, such as always free with your first purchase. Going back to the pick a pin flow for promoting pins, I'm actually going to choose this pin right here. This is a great pin to promote because there's multiple products in the shot, there's text overlay, and it's a long aspect ratio. So once I click on that pin to promote, now I go to the targeting setup. In this step, what you'll do is you'll select the terms that you want to bid on for this pin, in addition to any sort of audience targeting, as well as tracking for your URLs. So as I scroll down here, you can see this is the image of that pin that I just picked to promote. there's a few things that you should think about when selecting the terms that you want to target. First, it's important to think not just about that specific product. I'm absolutely going to include terms like belts, belts for men and women, and belt brands, but it's also important to think about use cases. This pin could perform potentially really well if I bid on terms like gifts or gifts for guys, gifts for friends, or adventure, snowboarding, those types of terms. Additionally, it might work well for someone who's browsing on Pinterest and trying to get inspiration for spring fashion and what to wear for spring. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back up here to the targeting for terms. So I'm going to start by adding in spring fashion. So selecting this, you can see that there's not only spring fashion outfits that I put in, but there's also a bunch of what we call related terms. This is our own suggested terms tool. And you can see here that on the left side, where it says results that are 10, these are basically what we would call phrase match terms. On the right, this is more like broad match terms. And so these are all related terms to spring fashion outfits. What I'm going to do actually is instead of adding them one at a time like I just did, I'm actually going to add them all at once. So let's try this again with maybe spring fashion. Let's say I want to add terms that are related to that. So you can see there's 19 related terms here. If I click up here, I can add them all at once. If I click on individual terms, that will add one term at a time. So I'm going to add all of these related terms. Another important tool that I wanted to call out when thinking about targeting terms is our import tool. So as I mentioned, I don't want to just run on spring fashion and some inspirational terms, but I also want to make sure that I get coverage on more product-specific terms. If I click on import terms, this is where I could copy-paste any sort of bulk set of keywords that I have. And so what I did is actually I used some other tools out there on the web. I did a search to find terms related to belt buckles and belts, and I found a list of a bunch of other terms that I could bid on. So I'm going to walk through that step now. So here's my CSV file of these roughly 400 terms that I also want to bid on that are very specific to the product. So you can see here that I've got men's belts for shorts, women's belts, top belts, those types of terms. If I simply copy paste these terms, I can click on this import terms. I'm going to use this drop down because they're separated by line breaks. And then I can just copy paste those terms in. So you now can see here that I'm bidding on over 373 terms for this pin. Another important call out is that you should make sure that you bid on at least 30 terms per pin. You can bid on up to thousands of terms. As long as they're relevant, we suggest that you start a little bit more broad, and then you can narrow down through optimization. So moving down, the next section is all of the audience targeting that you could overlay for this pin. Right now, promoted pins are based within the US only. So unless you offer a local business, I'd recommend keeping the location broad to cover anyone in the US who might be coming to Pinterest to discover more about spring fashion or belts or gifts for their boyfriend, for example. The default for device as well is all devices. Over 75% of Pinterest traffic is on mobile, so it's critical that you run mobile across all campaigns and pins. I'm going to leave this as default for all devices for now, but you can see that there's a breakout down to different types. So there's iPad, iPhone, Android mobile, Android tablet, and web, of course. And what's great is that in your reporting for this pin, you can see all the performance broken out by device. Lastly, the default for gender is all genders as well, and I'm going to keep this in place because I don't really want to rule out anyone who's searching for my pins based on their gender. The next section here is setting up your max CPC bid. So again, this is the maximum cost that you're willing to pay for click-through to your website. We recommend starting a little bit more aggressive to boost your performance out of the gates. So I'm going to start with $1.50 as my max bid. And again, if this pin performs really well, I could actually see much more efficient traffic than $1.50. The next step here is the destination URL setup. You don't have to do anything here. What the pin will organically do is pull in the URL that's already associated with it. But what we'll see many partners do is if you have any sort of tracking set up on your side, such as with Google Analytics or Omniture, you can append UTM parameters into this URL. As long as you're not trying to ping a third party or use view tags, you'll be fine. You just need to make sure that your domain is included in the destination URL. So that just took us through the entire setup for this specific promoted pin. The final step in getting this promoted is to choose which campaign you want this pin to sit in. For a quick overview of how campaigns work and what that structure is, right here, you can see that the campaign houses both the start and the end date for any pins, as well as the overall daily campaign budget. You can have one pin running in a campaign, or you could have up to hundreds of pins running in one campaign. It's up to you from a structural standpoint how you want to set up your promoted pins and campaigns. So you can see here in this account, I actually have a number of campaigns already running. So I could choose to put this in an existing one, or I could create a brand new one. So I'm going to create a brand new one and call this Belts Gender Neutral Spring Fashion. So I'm going to create that brand new campaign. Here's where I'll choose the start and the end date. So I'm going to have this start on February 20th, and I'm not going to include an end date because I'd like to keep this going to see how this performs. And then I'm going to assign a daily budget of $100 a day for this campaign. And then the last step here is selecting Promote This Pin. And then you'll see here that data for this pin will start to show up after 24 hours. And what this page took me to is basically the stats for this campaign and any pins that are associated with this brand new campaign that I just set up. So if I scroll down here, you can see there's one pin in this campaign, and that's the pin that I just created and set up. If I click into this pin, this is where I can look at all of the different targeting dimensions that I had set up. So here's all the terms that I included. And I can also look at performance, as I had mentioned, by device. So once I start to see data, I can segment out in any way I want. One important call out too is that at any point in time, once you've promoted a pin, or even before it goes live, you can always edit what you've done. So right there, I just clicked on Edit Promoted Pin. And what I could do is I could decide I want to add more terms, or potentially I could reset this and add new terms, or decide to optimize against other terms. Additionally, I could up my bid or lower my bid depending on performance. So with the goal in mind of driving signups to this website, I'm seeing strong results, so I could easily just decide to bid up to $2 instead of $1.50. I can save those changes, and they'll go into effect right away, and you'll start to see the data, again, 24 hours after you make those changes. And with that, that's an overview of an account structure and how to set up your first promoted pins on Pinterest. And you should look for our next video featuring Matt, who's also on our team, and he will dive into overall account structure and how to optimize your account to drive even better performance. Thanks so much.